Okay, we are back, and that problem was solved. So, what a great way to start the panel. We do it live here. We do it loose. You guys got to hear my voice like 3 times, and we were in an echo chamber. You did miss a pretty good Overwatch joke by Lee, and by good I mean horrible. Anyways, we are here for our Black Lives Matter in the esports industry panel, and I am joined by our very special guest, close friends of mine, and also a pro player that I've been following for some time. So, without further ado, I'd love to pass over to you guys for intros. Courtney, why don't you get us started?
I'm Courtney. I also go by Glitch City. I am a music producer on YouTube, and my focus is on video game music.
Cool, cool. Thank you so much. And Lee, what's up, man?
Hey man, my name is Lee Massey. I'm the executive director over at Pirates. I used to do a bunch of stuff in esports, help build Ghost Gaming, and I'm also a massive nerd.
Massive nerd. Well, hey, you're in a like-minded group now. And Terrence Miller, how are you doing, man?
What's up? I'm Terrence Miller, go by Terrence M. I play a lot of card games, mostly known for Hearthstone, and I just love to compete.
So, first of all, thank you guys all for being here. Obviously, I don't need to set the context for why this panel is so vital right now. As everyone knows, the U.S. is currently being rocked by social unrest and protests all around the police brutality and the killing of George Floyd. Now, I know that to many people, these problems aren't something new that is just now on the surface. But as we work in esports and gaming, the international nature of this movement has caused many esports orgs and game developers, those who have never commented on issues of systemic racism in the US or police brutality, to take a stand. So, the goal of this panel is simply to have a long form conversation about the realities of being a black nerd, about being a black gamer, about being black within the esports community, and also we aim to continue this conversation. We've seen a lot of black squares. We've seen a lot of people post nice corporate speaked paragraphs on their social medias, and then okay, what now? I hope we can have a conversation about what should happen now from the people who have lived experience with this problem. So I guess to start things off, I'll start with a story of my own. I am mixed. I'm half black. I'm half Italian. But you wouldn't know that if I had my hair short, or if I'm very pale one day or very tan one day. And my experience as being a gamer in esports has always been one of passing, right? I grew up in a black household. I grew up and surrounded by my black friends, and yet whenever I joined a LAN party or a StarCraft tournament, I was surrounded by whiteness. These were people who didn't know the same shows as me. They didn't know the same music of me, and like any other kid, I just wanted to fit in. I wanted them to know that, please see me as just another guy who loves StarCraft. And what I've learned is that if I don't tell people I'm black, no one will even know that I'm black. I can easily pass. And at the same time, there are other esports communities that I love that are much more influenced by black culture. I love fighting games. I love the arcade scene. I love Street Fighter. I love Smash Brothers, right? These are things that really formed me as a competitive gamer. And in these circles, I've noticed a completely different things. There are black commentators, there are black voices, there are black people who are easily among some of the most influential people. So I guess to get the conversation started, I'm going to pose a question to you guys. Do you think that my experience do you think that my experience noticing the drastic racial discrepancies between different communities and different genres, do you think that's something that's just like unique to me, or have you guys also noticed that it seems as if depending on what gaming community you enter, you can be met by a completely different set of cultures and standards and norms? Lee, I'm pretty sure that you have an opinion on this one.
I have an opinion on a lot of things.
Yeah. I love
Yes,
that. Yeah.
I have an opinion on this. I definitely think that you can. Shit. Like you're pretty much speaking the voice of every African American in the gaming industry.
Yeah.
Like everybody's had the same experience. Everybody's had the same feeling of imposter. Like, am I supposed to be here? Am I in the right spot?
Yep.
I'm passionate about video games just as much as the people around me, but I still feel like my voice isn't being heard because my voice isn't important enough. I think that a lot of the at the end of the day, it all comes down to like, does your community empower you to be the best person that you can be? And I think that that's where I feel like a lot of African Americans have begun building their own communities. And I think that if you see that, like, when you see that, you can identify immediately and say, those people built their own community because they wanted to be surrounded by like-minded individuals, but they also wanted to be surrounded by people that accepted them for who they are. Like the Gay Gamers Association, the Black AACP, there's so many different like little small ecosystems. And the funny thing is that like there's so many different chunks of interested parties on this what I call the Venn diagram of gaming, where it's just like people that are really into like social activism, but they're not really into gaming, or the people that are really into gaming and not really into social activism. It's a very small Venn diagram, and we're starting to see that they're beginning to shift. A lot of the people that are gamers are finding their voice.
Yeah.
They're finding it.
Yeah, and I think just to speak on what you said, because I think it is true, you're right, a lot of people have experienced this. I would even go as far to say that women are also in that group. Women who love gaming, especially esports, have found the need to create their own communities. Now, something that I think is very telling is when we just think of the esports community at large, right? There is no white male esports community, because that is esports, right? That is what you see the majority of pro players, you see like the majority of esport team owners, you see the majority of people who work within the esports industry is a white male. So I'd love to open that up. Terrence, you have competed at the highest levels of Hearthstone, and you firsthand have experienced what it's like immediately being othered because of how you look, even though you're playing the same game at the same level of your counterparts. How was that experience?
It's a really weird experience because like while I'm playing and when I like I love card games so much. Like I've played them since I was like 6 or 7 years old. So like all of my closest friends I've like played card games with, and everyone that I like, mostly everyone that I get to meet in real life is like some of my best friends. And then like once you get to the like online aspect of it, and like people just get to hide behind this like wall and like they're anonymous and they like kind of feel like they can say whatever they want to you, and it's like it's such a polarizing experience from like how amazing everyone that I meet is in person, and then what you see when you're online.
Yeah. And Courtney, I can't help but acknowledge the fact that you not only have to deal with being a fan of FPS games and playing Valorant, playing Overwatch, not only having to deal with being a woman, but also being a black woman. There are now two angles of attack in which the most toxic and predictable of esports trolls can hit you with. What is that like, trying to enter a game, this is something you do for fun, but now having to again be on the defensive almost immediately?
Well, I actually have 3 targets on my back because not only am I a female and black, but I'm also LGBTQ. And I will say that YouTube has molded me into growing some thick skin just to like handle whatever's coming at me, but I can't say the same for all my peers.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I'll go into a game of Overwatch.
Yep.
When it first came out.
Oh,
Voice
yeah.
Comms, it was like my first game that I actually played religiously online
Yeah.
with a bunch of my friends. And I will say there is a difference between YouTube trolls and then like, just gaming trolls in general.
Yeah.
And man, they are a different breed. They are different.
Yeah.
And it's like I've grown to like, either ignore it or combat it, or I don't want to say publicly shame them in game, but I'm going to publicly shame them in game to let not just my teammates, but also cops are coming in.
The cops are coming for you.
Yeah.
But also let the
I'm
entire game know that this is not okay. I feel like that falls on my responsibility as not just a creator but also an influencer and a voice shits in the communities that I'm in, to let that specific person know that's not okay, that's not welcomed, and if you do that behavior again, we will call you out. All
Yeah.
it takes is one voice to get everybody else to voice that, hey, that's not okay, that's not allowed.
Yeah.
you know
And you are fortunate because, as you said, you were kind of molded in the fires of YouTube, right? You've developed this thick skin. But upon hearing your experience with this, I can't help but think there are people who are drawn into these games, especially nowadays, because the games are getting a more diverse cast of people. They're getting a more diverse cast of characters. They're being marketed to a much larger group. But what if they don't have that thick skin? What can we do? And I think now I say we collectively as the esports industry, because I was actually having a conversation with a colleague about this, and they were saying, well, I think more game developers should offer the mute function, right? You should be able to like mute players. And the more I thought about it, I realized that's not actually doing anything. It's pretty much saying the onus on someone being targeted is to just ignore it, is to just block it out. You're still allowing someone to be racist on your game that you invite everyone to play. So I would like to just ask the question, do you think that there's more, and this is to everyone, do you think there's more that game developers should be doing when it comes to taking hard lines on people? Hey, if you're caught using racially insensitive or like toxic behavior in game, permabans, like you cannot play this game. Do you think that's something that is possible?
I want to say it is. When I started Valorant, when it went live, what was it, last
Yes.
week,
Yeah.
they did something different that I haven't seen any other game do. Not Overwatch, not Call of Duty, heck, even Pokemon. They literally made you agree to a social community contract, which I think it's a great start. Obviously, we don't know how much is going to be enforced in game or when a player reports another player for breaking such a contract.
Yeah.
But it is a great start to let the player know that this is the game stance on their community. And if you're
Yeah.
caught breaking that, we will not hesitate to issue, like you said, a permaban. And people will be like, oh, for example, right? Why are you doing this? Why are
Yeah.
you banning me from a game that, is free, stuff like that? They can do whatever they want with their game. And if they want to have their community a welcoming community
Yeah.
and a safe community, they will do everything in their power to make sure that's a thing,
Lee, I think you seemed like you wanted to jump in on that.
No, I was just thinking about, okay, so like I think that where we stand right now, we're at a really weird time in America
Yeah.
and globally, because
Yeah.
a lot of people are finally being able to realize that this is a situation that's been going on for years.
Yeah.
And I mean, it blows my mind because we've been putting, like, as a community, the African Americans by and large create content. We create so much of the content because naturally our culture, like we feed our culture. Our culture
Yeah.
feeds back into us.
Mhm.
Like you can say that about, can you, it's funny to me because when I think about this more and more, like the last few weeks, I've just realized that like so many aspects of African American culture are the flavor for the world, but the world does not give it back in any way, shape, or form, because everyone wants to laugh, dance, and cry with us, but nobody wants to laugh, dance, and cry with us while understanding our play. And it's an interesting perspective on it. So, okay, I say that to say this. What I think is we're beginning to see a shift because for the longest time, Valve and Riot, they've all been laissez-faire about what can be said and done in their games.
Yeah.
Usernames, text chat, completely, like I've been complaining to Valve for years. Like, hey guys, maybe we should take it away. You shouldn't be able to say the N-word. Maybe I don't want to see somebody with like kill all black people as their username. Maybe
Yeah.
I don't want to see that. Maybe we can, make this a little more like acceptable for everybody.
Yeah.
And for years, I was met with nothing but crickets.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Valve is putting out these things like, yeah, we're going to start, like going through chat records, and Riot is now, like going to go through their names of their characters. And I mean, Blizzard has always been really good. But people complained about Blizzard doing it because when Overwatch came out, people were saying that Overwatch is too SJW.
Yeah.
Mostly because Overwatch was not letting people, like if you said GGEZ, then it would like change your text to like I'm a big baby, blah blah blah, like stuff like that. I was like, that's a funny
Yeah.
like that's a funny way of saying it, but
Yeah.
people just change the spelling. Like it's just like you just switch it up a bit.
Yeah.
So we're meeting this point where I think that the curtain is being pulled back on this small thing that we all thought was just, oh, it's just black people, oh, it's just women, oh, it's just gay people.
Yeah.
But now it's actually, no, the whole fucking world needs to see this.
Yeah.
Because just because you're on the internet and you're anonymous doesn't mean that gives you a free
pass.
license to be an
Yeah.
asshole.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, like that's it. Everybody, like, there's so many people that just want to be mean for no reason. And I think that we need to. I think where we are right now is we are given the opportunity to make something better. We're given the opportunity to make a change.
Yeah.
And it is on us to make a change.
So
it's
Lee,
on us to
yeah.
make this last.
So Lee, I want to focus on that word change, because change means a lot of different things to some people. If you love gaming, if gaming has always been something great for you, you've never had to deal with being targeted by how your voice sounds, or you've never had to be targeted in gaming. Change to you is, oh, this is different. Why do things have to change? Because for me, things have been going well. I say that because a large group of the dissenters that say, oh, games should be out of politics, games shouldn't be political, which is a whole nother discussion to say that fighting for the equality and the safety of your fellow man is politics. But that's a whole other discussion, right? That there's There's a huge group of gamers that say, why do things need to change? And personally, and then Terrence, I would love to pass this to you, because I think you have a lot of experience with this. I think a lot of things that gamers, especially gamers, because we kind of stick to our games a lot, we stick to our hobbies. I don't think people realize that when you get targeted by how you look, or when someone others you, it's not the first time that happened in that day. Probably it's certainly not the first time it happened that week. It's certainly not the first time it happened in your life. There is a sense of overwhelming, constant barrage that I think a lot of people who have never experienced this type of discrimination, they just don't understand on a visceral level. They don't understand, and we were talking before, how demoralizing and exhausting it is to still encounter those things that you encounter every day in the workplace, that you encounter just every day in your life, even when you're in a playground that's supposed to be this escapist fantasy in which you have fun. So Terrence, it takes so much time to get as good at games as you are. There is an incredible amount of grind there. And personally, from my knowledge of esports, I know that grind gets easier when you have peers in your space, when you have people who you can practice with, when you have a community early on that can say, hey, we're all trying to get good, like at the game. Has that been a challenge to you, to find people early in your competitive career that you could grow up with, that you could skill with? What's it like trying to climb up from an esports amateur to someone trying to make it professionally, being black in esports?
I'd say when I first started out, like some of the friends I met when I first started out, I'm still pretty good friends with today, but I wasn't really like too attached really to anybody. Like before meeting them in person, like you can never really know. And even like some of the people that I like did think I was friends with, like I remember an example of when I would just join into a stream or a Discord, right? And there's people saying all sorts of like rude and racist things. And then like if I like say something in the chat, they're like, oh, stop, you can't do that, Terrence is here. And then I remember someone specifically making the comment like, oh, so it was okay when he wasn't here?
Yeah.
There's things like that, like that will always like happen behind your back and things like that. But like everyone that I've like had the opportunity to meet in person, like I said before, has been really great. What else?
So first of all, shout outs to that ally who, because the thing is, that's the type of thing that I think, a lot of my goals with this panel is to give some practical advice. I want to give practical advice because a lot of people, maybe they're silent because they don't know what they can do. I think just something like that, being the person that sticks up and saying, you know what, I'm going to be the one to call to question what everyone else is seeing as normal. I'm going to be the one to say, hey, well, like, was it okay when Terrence wasn't here? I think things like that go a long way. And personally, I hope to see more of it.
to add on to that from before, like
Yeah.
from when the DreamHack situation was happening, the person that did write one of the first articles for it was like one of the friends that I met, like that was hosting some of those tournaments back then, and she was the first one to do that, as well as with like everything that's been happening as far as like Black Lives Matter
Yeah.
recently. A lot of the people that I've met, like I haven't really had to block anyone that I like follow on Twitter or anything for having any kind of like weird kind of saying anything like racist or anything.
Yeah.
Like everyone that I have like become friends with over these times has been like very vocal on Twitter about supporting the movement.
And also, just for quick context, the DreamHack scenario that Terrence just mentioned back in 2016, I believe.
Yeah.
Hearthstone isn't always a game in which you see the players' faces or you see the player cam. So when Terrence was rising up in the ranks and when he was performing so well at this tournament, many people in Twitch chat were not aware that he is black. So when he was finally on a live stream match in which they saw his face and they saw him play, it's one of those moments locked in time for me because I was just a journalist just covering it. I was at DreamHack and I was sitting there, and it to me struck so much truth to, yes, this is precisely what happens the moment people realize you're non-white. And what we're seeing is, because, obviously because Terrence was playing in front of thousands and thousands of people, it was on this big stage, what happened, a lot of people, thankfully, were appalled by it. But what was most telling is they didn't understand. They were confused as to why it was happening. They didn't expect it why it was happening. Actually, in fact, DreamHack wasn't even prepared to moderate the chat because they weren't even aware that something like that would happen. And I think it's so telling because anyone who has any experience being anything other than non-white, you know exactly what happens. Me personally, this is something that's happening my entire life, and a lot of my black friends can attest to this. There is a moment when you're walking past a crowd of white men. There is a moment, if it's late at night and they're all drinking, if you walk past a crowd of white men, there is this thing that goes off in your head, someone's going to do something to me. Someone's going to say something about my hair. Someone's going to call me. Someone's going to do something, right? And I think that's an experience that a lot of people just inherently know. And I think that moment, Terrence, and I'm so glad that you brought it up, that has always stuck out with me because it was the first time many people in esports and gaming realized, oh, wow, these people don't care about Terrence's skill at the game. They don't care about his performance. Right now, the only thing they're commenting on is the fact that he's black. And I think for anyone to say that is a political issue, I think for anyone to try to say that it's a sensitive topic to bring that up, I'm calling you out on that. No, it's not. I think esports can do better in having a very, very clear line in terms of the people who organize these tournaments, in terms of the developers. I personally thought Blizzard should have immediately come out with much more vocal disdain and kind of a really hard line for their fans there. But unfortunately, they didn't. Maybe now that, I hate using the term in vogue, but I do want to talk about that later. Now that it has become more corporately acceptable to talk about these things, I hope to see that stuff in the future. Lee, I know that you wanted to jump in.
Oh, no, you're good. This is good. I love listening to this. This is amazing.
Well, yeah, these are things that...
Funny thing, I
Yes,
was
sir.
moderating Twitch chat during Terrence M's May 2016 DreamHack.
Really?
Okay.
Like that's funny. I can pull up the post because
Fascinating.
I can pull up the Twitter post from that day. No, so 2016 I was working at Muxy.
Yep.
I was I lived in Austin, Texas. And I was working with Esteban, who just recently left South by Southwest.
Yeah.
And he was just like, we need somebody who understands Twitch. I worked at fucking Muxy. Why not me? So they were like, yo, moderate this chat. And I remember being like, what the hell just happened? Why is everything getting really racist?
And
yeah, that's funny. So it took me a second to be like, this is super familiar. So I just had to pull it up. Super familiar.
Yeah. And
wow.
We've seen the same thing happen with other, black influencers and black faces within the esports community. We've seen it happen with Malik from the Overwatch
Malik
League.
Forte.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which huge. I just want to say like huge ups to him. It took a lot of guts to comment on air about that incident. And again, if you guys just want to know the context, it's the exact same thing that happened with Terrence, right? There's a group of people that just feel as if they must comment, they must make some. And I think at that it was the Trihex emote, which to me, I have always taken a personal. So okay, here's some context. I'm a massive fan of Trihex, just an absolute massive fan. I have been a fan of his speed runs ever since the way back. And for me, maybe when I was a little more like naive in the esports and gaming space, I had never even once thought that the Trihex emote was anything negative, was anything racial, was anything. It was just the emote of one of my favorite speedrunners. And I think in that moment when Malik was essentially being a cyberbullied through the Trihex emote, it was just this perfect storm of, man, like, to try to unpack how wrong this moment is, to use the joyous, and again, Trihex is a very joyous person. He's to use the image of Trihex as if it's something that then can be used to bully another black man in esports. These are things that I hope with this type of conversations and other conversations, people can become more comfortable talking about. People can not only become more comfortable talking about it, but more comfortable having very, very clear criticism for it. I wish that Blizzard took that opportunity again to support Malik in a much bigger way. I wish that, and Lee, you may have experience with Twitch moderation that I don't. I wish that it became the norm to shut this stuff down immediately. With that said, I kind of like to move the conversation over to what's actually happening right now with the Black Lives Matter movement and all of the corporate posturing around it. Now, I'm an eternal optimist. I still think it's within the time window for any big corporation that has made this sweeping declaration that they're going to do things and change things. I think you still have time to do something and not be called a massive hypocrite. But at the same time, Lee,
I think we need to get rid of apologies. I think that this is the time when, how somebody can, a massive YouTuber can say something really shitty.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then 2 minutes later they can make a YouTube video of them crying, and then all of a sudden everything's supposed to be fucking forgiven. I think that needs to stop. I think that personally, I think that if you say a bunch of shit in Twitch, I think that your account should be deleted, and I think it should be removed. Everything should be revoked, regardless of how much money Twitch makes from you. And that's the biggest thing: is if Twitch makes a certain it's business. We need to dissect and remove the relationship of income versus person. If you are bringing a company a certain amount of income, that doesn't make you infallible and it doesn't make you protected.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, we all know that in capitalism that's not the case. If you make a lot of money, then you're invulnerable.
Yeah.
But for most of us, we're not invulnerable. And I think that what we need to do is your affluence level and the amount of money that you bring in per month should not give you some kind of fucking Superman situation where you can call somebody anything you want on the internet and then get away with it. No, we need repercussions, true repercussions. So we need to have there's a long list of things that needs to happen. But at the end of the day, it has to come from the people. We have to say that's what we want. We have to hold ourselves accountable. Otherwise, companies are going to continue letting people walk all over us.
So Courtney,
It's we have to start setting the example.
Yeah.
Offer punishments. If we let something get away in our industry, then everyone else is going to look at us like we're a joke and thinking, hey, we're doing this, we're passing it on to this new industry,
Yeah.
And we also have to offer education. Offer punishment, but also education, because otherwise, if we just let them get off scot-free, even with a ban or anything, that's not going to change the world,
So Courtney, you have tons of experience on YouTube, right? You have been a YouTube creator for a very, very long time. You have a very, very sizable audience there, and I'm sure that you have seen pretty much every single YouTube drama thing unfold. I'm very curious what you think about what Lee just said about this relationship between, the YouTubes, the Twitches, these big corporate entities that, allow creators to make a living. Do you think it's something that is is plausible to off of the mistake of maybe, oh, it was heated gamer moment. Boy, do I despise that phrase. Do you think
Heated
that
gamer moment.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. But like, what is your like experience in being a YouTube creator? Do you think that there are ways in which people get off too scot-free, or do you think that it's plausible for these huge corporations to pretty much start removing their content creators vis-a-vis their income as well?
So YouTube has been getting better very slowly over the years. Obviously, with that whole Logan Paul situation at the end of 2018, that really sparked a change, and I believe other platforms were taking notice. Definitely Twitch was taking notice too of how YouTube handled the situation. I'm using Logan Paul as an example because that's the most recent incident I can think of. One of the largest creators on the platform, bringing in probably YouTube butt tons of money, but he did a big no-no, broke every single terms of service you can even think on the internet, and even it's like a social law, but even embarrass our home country, embarrass the country in question, which was Japan, and probably even broke local law as well. And so everyone's looking at YouTube, be like, hey, what are you going to do about this? Yeah, he's your largest creator, but are you going to set an example out of him to make sure your other creators don't get away scot-free?
Yeah.
And they've been getting better about punishing creators over time. For example, before Logan Paul, PewDiePie, he had a heated gamer moment.
Yeah.
And even before
That's
that,
the dumbest phrase. Can we not get called a gamer moment? We go, oh man, I'm top 5 in Warzone. Let me just dig in my big bag of racism. Give me a second.
Yeah. So obviously, it's kind of become like a meme, like at this point. But I think that I think the reason it upsets me so much is because for some reason, rather than just say a racist moment, I feel as if a lot of the true onus of that it's actually been put on the backs of gamers. Like, gamers now have to receive the brunt of, oh, I guess gamers are just defined by racism. I guess gamers are just inherently racist, which I hate, because just like what Terrence said, though, there are so many positive people within the gaming community. There are so many people who, wouldn't even dream of thinking to bring in something as horrible as racist into gaming. So this whole concept of like heated gamer moments, I don't know, Lee, maybe we have different opinions on that, but I don't think that there's anything inherently racist with gamers. I think
I'm not saying that there's anything inherently racist about gamers. I just think that it's funny. Hold on. Has anybody in this group ever had a racist gamer moment? Have we ever had a racist moment while we're playing a video game? No. I've never lost a Dota or League of Legends match and immediately wanted to like curse somebody out based on their gender, sexual orientation, or anything, or race. No, I've never wanted to do that. But for some reason, there's a large component of the gaming industry, and I'm not even going to say the gaming industry. You know what? I'll be the first person to sit down and say it. Spoiled little children on the internet who at the first moment of, oh man, I'm losing in this video game, or I want to blame somebody else. You know what? They're always looking for a scapegoat, and the first scapegoat they go to is race. Why is that the first thing? This isn't a gamer issue. This is a people issue. This isn't something where we need to say this is an issue only sitting in the gaming industry. I wouldn't call this a racist gamer moment. This is a racist moment, because guess what? Twitter is full of videos of people walking down the street, stretching on stairs, and all of a sudden they're being racially attacked. This isn't an issue. Yeah, sorry.
So Lee, I think that, as moderator of this, it's my job to try to bring up the other side. I do think that there is a nuance, and not trying to excuse anyone, but there is a group of gamers that, they are knee-jerk, what's the word?
Reaction?
They have a knee-jerk reaction to absolutely anyone who tells them what they can say, what they can't say.
I've never been hit in the knee and immediately wanted to call the person the N-word. What the? That's not a thing.
It's true, but I feel as it would be remiss to not bring up the fact that there are trolls that they say the thing that is the absolutely worst thing they could say. And
have you ever dealt with a 6-year-old? The 6-year-old is going to do anything that it takes to get your attention because the 6-year-old wants to be the center of your universe for 5 minutes. That's it.
Ooh,
We're dealing with children.
I love
That's literally it.
That
And
is
the thing is,
yes,
we
it's
all
true.
know a group of people like
Yeah.
that on the internet.
Yeah.
That's a sad thing.
And they immediately
internet-
go to the most volatile thing they could say, because Lee, I actually love that. They want your attention because like if they were to just like sit in the reality of them getting destroyed in game, that would harm them. So it's like, no, let's actually make it about something completely different. Also,
that blows my mind too.
So
that gets under my skin.
There's also something that, and now this is so like back to my own personal experience. I love to trash talk in game. This is something that I have learned, I think, from the fighting game community and arcade culture. Even before that, my uncle would play chess. He was very, very good at chess, and he would bring me to these chess parks. And I would love how these chess guys, these like practically these hustlers, they would smack talk you every move. Part of what they do is this constant barrage of trash talk. So I will always defend people's abilities to insult people based on their gameplay. I think that there is true joy that comes from me with that. However, I will say that Black people know how to trash talk and make it fun. In every single esports community, there is a huge difference between and again, I'm not trying to stereotype, but FPS trash talk in LANs, those 2003 Halo montages of white men screaming at the top of their lungs. It's the most terrifying, angry thing. It is completely different from what I would consider the verbal, the wordplay, the trash talk, the banter that happens in the Black community. So I think that there's a lot of nuance at play. Personally, I think that a lot of these gamers, and like not these gamers, I'm one of them too. There's a big thing with just experience. Like there's like there's a lot of people who they're not raised in diverse cities. They're not raised in which they interact with non-white people. So I think whenever you talk about race, there's always that moment in which you say it all comes down to ignorance, right? Are we really just dealing with ignorance here? And what can the esports industry do? And is it even the esports industry, and again, part of why we're having this discussion, is it on the esports and gaming industry to try to tackle the rampant ignorance that is on display in our games? And this is an open question. Honestly, who knows if there's a right answer to it? Is it on us?
It's definitely on the industry to call out the examples when they see it and not let that happen. But it's still on people as a whole for it to not happen anymore. It's going to happen. There's tons of shitty people in the world, but what are you going to do when it does happen? You have to actually have a response to that. You can't just be ignore it, and then they ignore it, someone else does it, and then someone else that's trying to join. People always say oh, what can we do to have more diversity within the community? It's if there's these people that are being racist, and then your first experience is that are you going to want to stay in the community? You're not going to want to do that at all.
So Courtney, you said that you had to grow a thick skin to even exist in the space that you do and to succeed in the way that you have. A lot of people think that's the answer. Oh, just grow a thick skin. I have. Come on, this is the internet, right? This is the internet. No one's actually on the internet. You don't have the right to not be assaulted through words on the internet. And again, Lee, I am playing the devil's advocate here because this is a real
did you see my
take.
face?
Yes, I did. This is a real take that people have. This is a real take that people have. Personally, I don't think that is the answer. I don't think that we should, call upon the people being attacked to just up their defenses. Maybe we should do something about the people being attacked. But Courtney, what would you say to those people that think that, oh yeah, the answer to this is just grow a thick skin?
I just want to say off the bat that it was definitely my choice to. I'm trying to find the right word besides grow thick skin, but I don't know. It's I wanted a place in the community that I'm in right now, in multiple communities, and that was my choice to grow thick skin. And I know for a fact that not everybody can do that. I know people that are in the same community, are doing the same things that I'm doing, but we're definitely not the same person.
Yeah.
And so my suggestion, just like how Terrence was interacting with one of his acquaintances in the Discord, you
Mm-hmm.
need to be an ally for that person or your community. If you have a voice, use it.
Yeah.
It is your responsibility, socially and morally, to be that voice. Let people know that that's not acceptable, that's not okay, and just be there for that person. Not I guess, yeah, because I've been seeing protests
Yeah.
where, if you have that privilege, be that shield for your ally.
Yeah.
That's what we need to do. You
Yeah.
know.
You know, Lee, we
Yo, I'm
mentioned
always listening.
we mentioned before we went live on the call that one of the things that personally irks me is when people say that this is a sensitive topic. When
It's
people,
not.
yeah, right. So, Lee, why is this not a sensitive topic? Why is it? Because again, I think Courtney made some very, very good points. But the counterclaim to that, or the reason why it's hard for people to be allies, is because they sense that I am treading into territory that is cautious. For some reason, I believe that something bad could happen to me if I stick up. I don't know what to do. Why is that inherently? Why is it not a sensitive topic? Why should you not be afraid to stick up for someone?
A sensitive topic. So when somebody says a sensitive topic, it means that both sides have a possibility of being correct. And there's no way in shape or form that discriminating against a person based on any kind of factor that is inherently not their decision
Yep.
should not be that's not a sensitive subject. It's like asking Courtney if she's, like, how do you feel about being, gay in America right now? That's not a sensitive subject.
Yeah.
Like, Courtney is who Courtney is. It's
Yeah.
a fact.
Yeah.
Like, in point blank period.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like, I'm an African American male in America right now. My skin color is not a sensitive subject.
Yeah.
It's my skin color
And
in the
really,
story.
yeah. And really, it reveals someone else's own uncomfortable, like they are uncomfortable with the fact that you are black. So they would say that it's a sensitive issue. I don't want to talk about race. I don't want to make this about race, because you know what? It's very easy for you to not do that. It's very easy and it's very comfortable for you to, and again, this is where we get into the colorblind territory, right? Some people, and I think now it's becoming more like aware that that isn't anti-racist, but there's still a huge group of people who think that it is noble to say, I don't see race. I view everyone as equal. And I think that's
stupid.
Yeah, I think that's some bumper sticker bullshit, to be frank, right? Like,
No,
I think
that's some people who are uncomfortable with dealing with the race card, like
Yeah.
trying to sidestep the race situation. And I think the people that say that race is a sensitive issue, they know people on the opposite side of the fence who are 100% good people from top to bottom, except for this race thing. And I'm going to tell you this: you can't be 100% a good person top to bottom if you hate somebody based on the color of their skin. Like, I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't work with me.
Mm.
And that just tells me that you're either, like, you've been educated improperly. Because the funny thing is this is when people say systemic racism,
Yeah.
they're not talking about the people who are, like, taught by their parents that, like, black people are bad or Asian people are stupid or something like that. Like, this is the people who are taught in school. There are schools in the South, in West Virginia, where they're taught that people, like, there's schools that are that are paid for by churches, and the church has been saying, what was one of the posts recently? People with dark skin are dark skin because of sin, and they're inherently sinful. So in, like, working with them
Yeah.
or doing anything with them, you are caused by sin. Are you fucking kidding me?
No,
That's
yeah.
the dumbest shit on the planet. There's a long list of little things here where it's just like, guess what? Race isn't a sensitive issue. If you're racist, you're wrong. That's a fact. Moving on. Let's deal with things that are more important than race in 2020.
Yeah. And though, Lee, right now it seems as if race is the most important thing in 2020. Just to kind of ground this conversation and kind of remind why we're all here, this panel happened because a George Floyd was strangled over the course of 8 minutes and 47 seconds, or 46 seconds. And he did so while the other police officers had their hands in their pockets watching. It maybe took something that egregious. It took something that, I mean, if you watch that video, It's literally impossible to watch that video. I mean, I think it's impossible to watch that video and think, oh yeah, this is good. Like, this is normal. This is good. This is great. I'm glad this is happening in the U.S. Things are fine. Things aren't fine, and it took something like this to wake up, I think, a lot of the people. Despite the fact that it wasn't the first time, this wasn't the first time that a black American was killed by the police for doing nothing. Either they're jogging, either they're taking a stroll at night. I mean, it's hard to even imagine that Trayvon Martin was a sensational, huge news story in the U.S., and then here we are again in 2020, the same thing happened. So, again, we're the esports industry. We focus on fun. We focus on competitive glory. Is it our time to make a stand, and is it our time to say, okay, there's things we can do? So I would like to open up that conversation. What are the things you would like to see from the game developers in power? What are things that you would like to see from the people that are in power, in esports, from the people that run the media companies, from the people that invest in the space? What are some things we'd like to see from the industry? And Terrence, I would love your pro player opinion on this too, because I know that you're operating on a whole another hustle that I got out of when I was like 20. Trying to be a pro player, that's a hard thing to do. So,
Yeah.
Terrence, what are some things you would like to see from the esports tournament organizers and things like that?
Oh, I think the first thing is every idea that all these companies have had, what can we say, what can we do? I had an interview with someone from the Washington Post just recently, Noah Smith, and I don't think it's out yet, but he was saying that one of the game developers, I think it was Smite, mentioned that they had removed 5,000 racist names or things like that. And my first response to that was, why does it take this for that to be a priority for them? Why is it that something that's just happening all the time? You shouldn't just take this these circumstances and be like, oh, we're doing this now. Why wasn't it happening before, and things like that, as well as just as a general broader esports and as a pro player, just giving more opportunities for the people of color. When you have an event or a promotion, include you don't have control over who does well at your tournaments or anything, right? If I don't do well at a tournament, that's on me. You can't say oh, there's no diversity, Terrence wasn't in the top 8 of this tournament or whatever.
Yeah.
But if there's invites or some promotional event or something, that's when the game developers have the opportunity to include them, and as well as just hiring people that look like us and can show our perspective of things and advocate for us.
So Lee, I know that you and I, we work in a similar space. Some could call it the behind the scenes of esports, right? We're trying to, we're trying to do the partnerships. We're trying to join people together. We're trying to build this infrastructure that is esports, right? Me, personally, the amount of black people that I work with on a weekly basis is frighteningly small, in terms of people that can make decisions, in terms of people that can sign off on things that cost money. People that can sign off on, yes, we need to hire this player, or yes, we want to do this thing. Why do you think that is, and what are some ways in which you think the infrastructure of esports can be more black?
Esports is a numbers game. Everything about this is a numbers game. It's all about who can do the best for the cheapest amount. Yeah. At the end of the day, all esports is, I hate to say this out loud, but esports is just video game marketing, because the only objective for the publisher is to get more people playing their game. So what you have to do is we need to start, first off, this, what you're talking about, is a symptom of a larger problem and the larger issue at hand. First of all, most esports games are PC based, and for the past 15 to 20 years. Now we're seeing a shift towards mobile, because a lot of games have mobile components. Dragon Hearthstone, Runeterra, TFT, a lot of these games have mobile games, because it lowers the barrier of entry. So the issue is the burden of entry into these places for esports has been systematically shifted and focused towards affluent Caucasian and Asian males.
Yeah.
Like that's who we see, and that's the reason. It's
Of
a
course.
mirror. The
Well,
people who play the game are also going to be the people that are the best at the game because they fucking play the game in the first place.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing right now is the opening up. The door is finally open because for the longest time, the only people that were able to play video games at a high level were the people that were able to play a lot.
Yeah.
Affluent white males.
Because
so now
they
the
don't
door's
have to
open.
have jobs, they can focus on the things.
Boom.
And then, of course, and I want to I'll let you finish, but I just want to really highlight this point you made. The entirety of esports revenue for like the majority of this industry space has been selling headphones, microphones, and essentially luxury PC products. Things that, back to you, Lee, who wants to buy those? Affluent white
males. And that's the
communities.
issue that we're seeing is like it's beginning to shift. And that's the reason. Okay, so there's a couple things I've been thinking about for the past few moments. So first of all, the largest reason, remember when we were talking about children and how they react and they act out? They're mostly acting out because they're not getting the attention that they used to deserve. And they feel like they deserve it. They feel like they're entitled to the attention. Over the last 5 years, we've seen a massive shift in not only protagonists, antagonists, players, gameplay. We're seeing a shift from mostly video games being around apomorphic like creatures like Gex, the Gecko, or Ratchet and Clank, and white males. Look at every Call of Duty game before the latest one. It's all been white males. We're seeing a shift towards more women, more people of color. We're seeing it throughout all of entertainment. Yeah. And the people that used to, quote unquote, be the core demographic, white males, are beginning to get a little annoyed. So guess what? Now race and skin color and gender and all these things are becoming forefront because I'm seeing a lot less of myself. When you're used to seeing a caricature of yourself or your friend or something like that in every piece of content that you consume, suddenly seeing black women, seeing black men, seeing Asian men, like seeing like a large diverse cast and the world is opening up, causes people to feel a bit like, oh no, they're coming to get me. No, we're not fucking to come and get you. We're just gonna put ourselves where you are because you are not the large percentage anymore.
Yeah, we just exist.
We exist. So as these things happen, like we're beginning to identify and look at the world as a whole. Hey, guess what? Not every like white kid named Jimmy's going to play video games and like just play that game. No, now we've got Terrence. Terrence is an amazing Hearthstone player. He's an amazing card game player. He has a beautiful mind for card games. Guess what? That doesn't mean that Terrence is going to replace somebody else. He's earned his position. Yeah. And that's the scariest part of this for a lot of people is the fact that we are earning our positions and we're creating opportunities for ourselves where opportunities do not exist.
Damn, Lee,
something to
off.
add on to what you were like saying earlier is like, back when I was like growing up and like playing, like I never was able to really like travel to like tournaments when I was playing like Yu-Gi-Oh and things like that, which is what I started with. Like I think the farthest I made it was like Pittsburgh, when we like just drove the whole way and everything. Like I could never afford like the flights and stuff. Yeah. Even like directly after my like DreamHack Austin success, like there was so much interest in me. Like I didn't have the like equipment to be able to like stream or anything. Like I was playing on like a shitty laptop and everything. Like I didn't have any kind of equipment or anything. So like I definitely can like relate to the like we don't have as much like resources available to us to like be able to be seen within these games, even if we are like I've always been good at card games, but it took me like getting that one shot to grow that into more.
Yeah, man, those were so many great points, well articulated. I'm like trying to find the one that I want to highlight, but I mean honestly they're all true. One thing that I think really spoke to me is that there is this inherent, a lot of people take for granted what it feels like to just enter into a gaming space, and there is no obstacle other than your skill, right? For the longest time, esports has prided itself. We're esports. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're good, you can play with us. But what we're realizing is it's not that simple. There are so many barriers. Even something as simple of you see a group of players and they're all playing, and because they don't look like you, they're not even attempting to invite you to play, because even they are making the assumption that you're not a gamer because you don't look like me. You don't look like a white kid, or you don't look like an Asian kid. So why would I say, hey, like come over and play with us? And that is just multiplied by 1,000. There's so many little things like that. And Terrence, this concept of, even though you've always had this mind for card games, I don't think people really realize that when you just grow up with a PC in the house, when you just grow up with a spare car that you can just borrow around and drive where you want, when you just grow up with a parent who offers you frequent flyer miles. I remember, oh man, it was so funny. I remember I was doing this interview with a pro player. I'm not going to name names, but he was saying how the thing that made his esports career possible is that his dad had like thousands and thousands of frequent flyer miles. So he was literally able to fly to like every single event just for free. And it was like, man, how can we sit there as esports and say, oh yeah, like it only matters how good you are. That's why you're at the tournament. That's not the case at all. And I think
there's a couple things here, okay? Because when I say barrier of entry, you have to also think about, like, travel is a perfect one.
Yep.
Second one is is access to the computer, access to these things. Most neighborhoods, inner city neighborhoods, don't have, like, if they have access to a library, if these children have access to a library, they're not necessarily playing games on it, they're studying. Mm-hmm. And it's also, I think the key component a lot of people overwrite is community support. Because a lot of families do not support their children playing a lot of video games, at least in the 90s and the early 2000s, like most of us were raised in. A lot of our parents' part is like, you're fucking wasting your time while you're doing this. You're, like grounded from the video games, blah, 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 blah. Whereas a lot of these children who are now esports pros were given more access to it. I mean, I'm not going to say this is a cultural thing, but, like their parents weren't necessarily super present, if you know what I mean.
So Lee.
Like they were just like, let's let that,
So Lee, I actually will say it. Oh, sorry. Courtney, please, what were you going to say?
What I wanted to touch on, and this is piggybacking off Lee's point earlier, is just accessibility to the stuff that's available to them. And this is also piggybacking off of your initial question, is how can esports get more involved just in this? What can they do? And my very broad answer is for esports organizations and gaming development companies is to get more involved on the local level.
Yeah.
If you walk into a neighborhood, Southeast Houston, you got absolutely nothing. You got rundown neighborhoods, a supermarket, maybe like a city hall or something, maybe a rundown library, but like no access for like kids to pretty much apply themselves into something that they enjoy. And I know over in Korea and Japan, they have gaming arcades and PC bunks. We don't really have that here in the States. Yeah. And what I want to see companies and esports organizations do is help build up, I'm not saying just build like a PC bug like everywhere or like an arcade everywhere, but offer an opportunity for young minority kids to just get involved and get educated on what's out there. And so they have that accessibility and they have that same opportunity that our counterparts have gotten from just their parents. I want to see that on the local level. And once that they become more exposed and get more educated on that, I would say that's like probably a step in the right direction.
And Courtney, I just want to add to how true that is, and how personally, I don't think that has to even be viewed as something that's a risk for these companies. I don't think this has to be viewed as something that's even like a charity. Just if you are listening and you are trying to solve the problem of esports revenue, and if you work in esports, you are trying to solve the problem of esports revenue. What's happening right now is everyone's going after that same core demographic. It's a huge fight for the same group of spenders that we have been trying to get spend on esports for the past 5 to 6 years. But look at the stats of the black dollar, right? Look at really how much that the black community spends on certain products. I honestly do believe that if more esports orgs and game developers took Courtney's advice and said, you know what, rather than fight for this exact same audience that is, first of all, completely saturated with people trying to get you to be a fan of their team, so-and-so, why don't you go to some of these cities? Why don't you go to some of these local communities that no one is trying to access? No one is trying to create tournament leagues for inner cities, or at least no one with the corporate backing that can easily throw like 100K towards a tournament series that would maybe allow an entire group of gamers to flex their esports skill. Lee.
It takes more money to make a dollar than it is to earn one. If you earn one from people who are already willing to spend, it's a lot cheaper. If you go and you have to create from the grassroots,
Yep.
what you're talking about is grassroots like momentum. So it's
Yeah.
developing the need for it. And that's what I've been pitching for years. I've literally had the same conversation. Like, this is something that a lot of people realize, but it costs more money. Because what it does is you're bringing people into the ecosystem. If you are someone that's what the esports industry has been lacking and needing for a very long time, because nobody feels like, okay, first of all, who's in charge of these companies? People that don't feel comfortable having this race conversation in the first place.
Yeah.
So how are you going to expect these people to go to the inner cities, to go to the places where African Americans and Hispanics and Asians who aren't into esports reside, and bring them into the industry, bring them into the ecosystem so that they start watching this? Nobody turns on their television and says, you know what? I've never heard of video games. Let me go on the TV and find that thing. No, you're not going to go looking for Twitch. You have to be brought into it. As much as I like to say esports is a cult, where you have to get brought into it by somebody else. Somebody has to be super passionate about it, and they have to spread their passion to you. And esports and gaming is not something that you find yourself in for no reason. You get brought into it. And that's where we're at.
Yeah, and Lee, just to affirm some points you made there, from my personal experience, I often work with esports investors and kind of the financial side. I try to consult as well as I can, and one of the things that I see more than ever is it's a 1-2 punch of incompetency. The people who are spending in esports and investing in it. One, they don't actually care about esports because they don't understand esports. It could be literally anything. They just see it as, oh, look at the numbers, look at the engagement. I can get this millennial audience. I can get these digital natives. I can get them to spend. So because they don't care or understand about esports, and here comes the other punch, they don't see the value in investing in the infrastructure of esports. Because trying to invest in the infrastructure of esports, that's the opposite of the get rich quick that they want, because they were sold, and this is now, man, this is a whole nother panel. They were sold over the past 4 or 5 years, these overinflated, hyped up esports decks by people trying to make a quick buck by saying, oh, look at this, it's a paradigm shift, everyone's a gamer now, and it's much, much more nuanced than that. So, Lee, first of all, congratulations on your quest to try to pitch the infrastructure of esports. I just want to say a shout out to the guys over in Arlington, Texas. They're actually doing a fantastic job. There are schools there. Gosh, I wish I was prepared for the names, but I will put it in the link to this video when it's on YouTube. There are some fantastic.
Oh God, it's going on YouTube, so that means everybody gets to listen to our entire.
Yeah. Well, listen. Part of, and as this panel winds down, I can't believe we've been talking about this for an hour, but it's been a very, very informative panel for me.
We should do this more often.
We should do this more often. And you know what, Lee, that is why this panel exists. That is why this panel is happening, because one of the things that I first said when I was pitching the idea to this, I said, how many times have I moderated panels where every single person was white? How many times have I moderated panels where every single person was white? And it's like no one said a thing. It was just the most normal thing in the world. It was totally fine. But this panel, it took this happening in order to say, why don't we have a panel that's all black? And even then, it's viewed as something that's othered. It's viewed as something that's different. This is a
Let's
special
do an all-black panel when it's not about gender or race or LGBT stuff. I want to talk about regular video game stuff. Let's talk about the industry from the perspective of melanin.
There you go.
Yeah.
Dude,
that.
Yo, that's
what
step.
I feel like whenever I see black people on a panel, 99.9% of the time it's about diversity. Like, what the fuck?
So you know what? It's the same thing that happens with women in gaming. And I will say, I'm victim of it too. When I first started putting on these panels, maybe back in 2017, 2016, and the world was different back then, right? It was something novel to have a women in esports panel. But at this point, there is enough women in esports that you can just have a panel about any topic, and you can bring in any number of women experts. So, this is what we're having.
My challenge for you and every other person that puts
great,
together
a call to action. Here it is.
Yeah,
Lee's
my
call
challenge
to
is
action.
I don't want to see another diversity panel. I don't want to see another women in gaming panel. Just put the fucking people on your panels.
That's it. That's it.
That's
And-
it. Just put them on panels. Give them a voice. If you want to talk about how strong their voice is and how important their voice is, don't put it on a panel so you can say, hey, look at how important their voice is. No, I want to see them show it, because honestly, actions are a hell of a lot stronger than words are.
Yep.
If you show me and you put 5 black people on a panel about just video game stuff and people show up expecting to see Joe Schmo who's on every fucking panel, no, I want to see black, like, I want to see that.
But Lee,
Because it's just so stupid. Like, the way that we structure our conversations is inherently non-logical. It's illogical at the nth degree. So
Lee.
just put them on the panel. Sorry.
Lee, do you really think these people know 5 black people?
No, they should find a black person who knows 5 black people. It's not that hard. There's like 12 of us in the gaming industry. I know all of them.
That is hilarious. All right, well, guys, this has really been a fantastic panel. We have to do this again sometime. This has been our Black Lives Matter and the Esports industry panel. I just want to give a huge shout outs to all that was involved. Thank you guys for spending your Friday with me. And I guess the last thing that I want to say, we've talked a lot about race. We've talked a lot about this and this and that. But I think that really the call to action that Lee just said, that's it's the root of it. Now is the time for action, right? We've seen a lot of words. We've seen a lot of black squares, like I said, but now is the time for action. If you are within gaming, if you are in any way have any power, any influence, even if you're just a fan, even if you're just a gamer that is logging in tonight and you want to play, right? If you see something, say something. If you see someone being a racist asshole, say it out loud, right? It starts with you. Change starts with you. Action is what is going to make things better. And if you do have an ounce of empathy, if you've seen the video of George Floyd getting murdered, if you have ever once said to yourself, now is the time that I'm going to do something, well, now is the time. Change, act, do something better for esports and gaming. That is the time we have. You can follow all of our panelists at their Twitters. You can follow Courtney at GlitchXCity. Also, check out her YouTube. They've literally, they are the coolest mixes you can ever find. If you're into like the Pokemon games, oh my god, some of those battle themes are so dope. So you can follow Courtney there. You can follow Terrence at Terrence M_HS, and you can follow Lee at MASSIE Massey GG. This has been our panel. Thank you guys so much for having me as your moderator. This was great. Till next time, guys. Signing out. Bye. Bye.